for Benjamin Knight Fuchs, live on a Sunday evening. Benjamin, how are you?
Well, greetings, my friend Liam. Nice to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you too, my man. How's it going?
Doing awesome. Thank you. Happy Sunday to you.
Happy Bastille Day. Happy Bastille Day.
It's
Viva
Bastille
la
Day.
France.
Is that when they stormed the Bastille?
When they stormed the Bastille.
Sort of like January 6th?
Yeah.
January 6th, I don't want to get all political here, but January 6th was
style.
our version of storming the Bastille.
Yes, it was.
Anyway, I read an interesting article this week.
Okay.
Autism's a thing. I hear about it all the time as a nutritionist and as a pharmacist, and people attribute vaccinations and other things to autism. I read this very interesting article, so I thought we would talk a little bit about autism, what's now called actually autism spectrum disorder.
Autism spectrum.
It's actually called autism spectrum disorder. And the reason it's called autism spectrum disorder is because they used to have a bunch of different diagnoses that were similar to autism: attention deficit disorder, Asperger's syndrome, mental health kinds of disorders, and they separated them out from autism. Now they consider them all to be part of a spectrum of disorder or of diseases, mental health issues, and they call them autism spectrum disorder. So if you're going to be correct, politically correct, you got to call it ACD or ASD, ASC, autism spectrum disorder. Some people say autism spectrum condition, but either way, it's a spectrum. And you can be, as my friends sometimes will say, he's on the spectrum. You ever hear people say that? He's on the spectrum.
Sure.
That refers to the autistic spectrum. The key to understanding autism comes from the word aut, or the prefix aut. What is aut? What do you think of with auto? Aut, self. You're doing it yourself. When something's automatic, it does it itself, right? So auto refers to self. And somebody on the autistic spectrum disorder, autism spectrum disorder, autism disorder spectrum, somebody on the spectrum will not be able to interact with the outside world effectively. They'll either be super sensitive to stimuli, or they won't be able to interpret stimuli. Sometimes people will not understand social cues correctly. Like, for example, me and you having a conversation here, there's a lot of subconscious things that are happening as we're talking. I stop talking. Hopefully, I stop talking when you talk. You stop talking when I talk, and we kind of navigate. It's a dance, sort of. And in order to accomplish or to be good in this dance, in this communication dance or relationship dance with other people, you've got to be sensitive to cues. Autistic people are within themselves, self. They're not sensitive to outside cues, or they're not able to work with outside cues.
Fascinating. I had not realized that was a feature of the condition. Okay.
That's how the condition is. And so I don't know if you've ever seen an autistic kid. Sometimes they're really sensitive to noise. Sometimes they can't communicate. They can't talk. Or they can't emote correctly. They get angry quickly. Asperger's syndrome is something that can happen to adults. Autism actually does occur in adults also. And Asperger's syndrome is a type of disease that's on the spectrum, as they say, where people can't communicate correctly, or they have social anxiety disorder, or they somehow feel awkward in situations. And everybody feels a little awkward sometimes in social situations, but these people are pathological about it. It really affects their lives. So the thing about autism that's very interesting is rates have been increasing dramatically. I remember in the early 2000s, they talked about rates doubling, went from like 1 in 100 to 1 in 50 or so. But since 2010, it's doubled again.
Oh my God!
It was around 1 in 30. Yeah, it was around 1 in 40 people or so in 2010. Now it's 1 in 70 or 80 people. So the rates are increasing. Autistic rates are increasing, and nobody really knows why. But I read this interesting article today, this week. You could post up the first article, and it just reminded me of the triangle of disease. Now, I've always said autism is a digestive condition. It is initiated in the digestive system. There's obviously, whenever you have an emotional or mental health challenge, there are environmental, emotional, and mental issues. Sometimes trauma is involved, but not always. But what seems to be in common is there seems to be a gut or digestive problem associated with this condition. And I read a book many years ago, probably about 10 years ago, called The Gut and Psychology Syndrome by a doctor named Natasha Kinsky-Campbell. Anybody who is interested in this subject of the relationship between the gut and the brain, where she says the gut and psychology syndrome issue should read this book. It's a really cool book, and it has a lot of very interesting information, a lot of helpful information. So I knew about the relationship between autism and mental health conditions in general, including, by the way, dementia and problems with the microbiome, so-called dysbiosis. We always talk about dysbiosis. It's the first point on the triangle of disease. So anytime you have a chronic health condition, anytime you have a health challenge that does not resolve itself as it's supposed to, or as it would under ordinary conditions, you have to backtrack to the intestine, to dysbiosis, that is messed up gut bacteria, and a leaky gut. So it was no surprise to me, but I was very pleased to see this article is now on a mainstream news site, and it's now being accepted by the mainstream. So this is the article I read. If you could post that up again. And then if you pop that up, actually pop up the second article. This was an article that I just got off the web, off of, I think, Yahoo. This is from Medscape. Gut biomarkers accurately flag autism spectrum disorder. It turns out that there are little pieces of bacterial membrane, membranes of bacteria that live in the small intestine. Quick review. Bacteria is supposed to be in the large intestine, not the small intestine. The small intestine is a source of nourishment for bacteria because there's food there, not so in the large intestine. In the small intestine, if you have bacteria there, you're going to have a problem because now you have a medium for bacteria to ingest, to eat, to nourish themselves with, which is the food you ate. So this condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is associated with leaky gut, and this is where it all happens. This is where it all begins. SIBO, they call it, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, dysbiosis, messed up gut bacteria, if you want to speak colloquially. It's a disturbance in the microbiome. This disturbance in the microbiome causes a leaky gut, and literally pieces of bacteria called LPSs, lipopolysaccharides, will leak into the bloodstream and initiate inflammatory reactions in the nervous system, the brain, everywhere in the body. This is all health challenges. This is all of them. It's so simple that it's too simple. LPSs, lipopolysaccharides, are such a significant initiator of the inflammatory response that they'll actually give LPSs to rats and rabbits and animals when they want to test their drugs, their anti-inflammatory drugs. They'll use LPSs to stimulate an autoimmune or an inflammatory responses. So LPSs are also associated with autism spectrum disorder, and they're actually biomarkers. They can look for them. Next slide, Liam. This is an article on the gut-brain connection. Research in mice identifies possible mechanism linking autism and intestinal inflammation. It's not a possible mechanism. It's the mechanism. It's the way it works, and it works that way with autoimmune diseases and arthritises and dementias and skin problems, the whole shooting gallery, the whole kit and caboodle. And this is so cool because, number one, it answers the mystery of chronic degenerative diseases, and particularly ones that involve the immune system, like autoimmune diseases, which affect millions, tens of millions of people, as well as other chronic health challenges. Especially, it's important for folks who are dealing with skin issues, which can be really problematic because they're on the outside of your body. So now you're dealing with psychological, and especially in kids, psychological and mental health issues. Anyway, if you pop that up again real quick, Liam, that last slide. So this is another article on the gut-brain connection that identifies a possible mechanism. This one's from Harvard. Next slide. And this is what it's all about. Inflammation and neuroimmune dysregulation in autism spectrum disorders. Autism is an inflammatory issue. It's an immune issue. This is so interesting to me. All our health challenges are inflammatory and immune. What does that tell us? It tells us that inflammation and immunity, which lead to disease, or I should say disease, which is related to inflammation and immunity, are all about defense, protection. This is what inflammation is, and this is what the immune system is. The immune system is our defense system. Inflammation is the calling card of the immune system. It's the way the immune system manifests, and it's a protective response. It's a wall. It's a beaver's dam. It's like an airbag. Now, of course, an airbag is great. It's going to save your life, but it can also kill you. Airbag can be very dangerous, and inflammation can be problematic too when it's out of balance or when it's not resolving itself. Now, this whole idea of the defensive response relates to the vagus nerve. We talked about the vagus nerve last week. The vagus nerve, vagus means wanderer, like vagrant. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It runs from the brain and all the way down the body, all through the body. It covers all the nerves and innervates the digestive system, the heart, the respiratory system, plays a role in immunity and inflammation. It's important for the eating behavior, as we talked about, and chewing behavior, as we talked about on our last episode. It is the relaxation nerve. It activates the relaxation response. It's the main nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation nervous system, as opposed to the fight or flight nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. There's two nervous systems. In fact, I want to talk about these two nervous systems next week because they're really fascinating, really important. The one nervous system is your stress nervous system. Your other nervous system is your relaxing nervous system. Where do you think you want to spend most of your time? The relaxing nervous system. Where do you think you are when you're sick? In the sympathetic nervous system. Now, it is a balance. So when I say you're in the sympathetic nervous system, I mean you're predominantly sympathetic. You're out of balance sympathetic as opposed to parasympathetic. When you're relaxed, you're skewed on the parasympathetic side. Vagus nerve regulates the relaxation response to the parasympathetic response. Guess what? When you stimulate the vagus nerve, you can treat autism. This is what this article is about. The vagus nerve and autism, an overlooked factor. Vagal tone and vagal stimulation, strengthening the vagus nerve, relaxing the body, is now thought to be, or at least are attempting to use it as a therapeutic modality for dealing with autism. But you can activate the vagus nerve in all kinds of ways. Slow, deep breathing, as we talked about last week, touching the tip of your mouth with your tongue, the top of your mouth with your tongue, where the soft palate in the back meets the hard palate in the front. There's a little space where you can touch the vagus nerve. You can do this to your ears. Do you know this? You can do this to your ears and you can activate your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is kind of contacted in this area, so you can sort of manipulate or put some pressure, energy in the vagus nerve this way. The belly is another way, right under the belly button. There's all kinds of ways to activate the vagus nerve. Warm water, massage, muscle relaxation, all of these hot tubs, all of these are vagal stimulation strategies. And it turns out that stimulating the vagus nerve electrically, which is what they do in research facilities, can also provide some relief from autism symptoms. But a warm bath can do the same thing. All right, next slide. So what do? You change the way you eat. Autism and diet go hand in hand, or autism and problems with the diet go hand in hand. And this has been known about for a long time, but it still hasn't quite caught the mainstream. This is what Dr. Natasha Kinsky-Campbell's book, The Gut and Psychology Syndrome, is all about. Next slide. Exercise as well can help. Exercise and diet nutrition combination can help. And there's a very solid literature review that talks about this. And it makes perfect sense. First of all, when you exercise, you're secreting endorphins. And these endorphins can have a mood stabilizing effect. And then also, of course, diet and nutrition can help. And exercise can also help the body process sugar so that sugar is shunted from the blood into the muscle and into the muscle for storage in the muscle as you're exercising, and probably also in the liver. And it'll drop. Your blood sugar will drop. So autism, by virtue of its connection with digestive health, also has a connection with insulin resistance and diabetes and blood sugar problems, or hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. And of course, it also leads to problems with cortisol and this whole triangle of disease that we talk about all the time as the basis, as the underlying cause of all chronic degenerative diseases at play here with autism, as well as other chronic illnesses, chronic degenerative illnesses. Starts off with the digestive system, works in the blood sugar system, works to cortisol and the thyroid. And by the way, it's a circle. So the thyroid suppresses or affects the digestive system, which affects causes more blood sugar effects or dysglycemia, messed up blood sugar effects. And you get this triangle that circulates like a triangle, not like a circle, like a triangle. All right. So another at least explored cause of autism, something that's thought to be involved, is, next slide, processed food. Oh, next slide after that, is processed foods. Could eating processed foods while pregnant, this is the mom, we'll talk about the mom here in a minute, but processed foods, mom eating processed foods, mom eating McDonald's, mom eating Doritos, mom eating whatever, French fries, Twinkies, cereals, all of, 80% of the calories, maybe more. Now it's 90% probably the calories we eat come from ultra processed food. They say processed food, but it's really ultra processed food. This is a really significant problem because it goes to show you can't indulge in the corporate swill, which is what processed food is, and not have some kind of health implication for it. And now not only are we having health implications, but our babies, our fetuses, if that's the word, feti or fetuses, and then infants, even before they're fed, even before they're eating their own baby food and Enfamil and, you know, Happy Meals, whatever the heck they're eating in the womb, they're suffering from the mom's ingestion of processed food. Next slide. And there's also preservatives that can play a role in autism spectrum disorder. At least it's thought. Between preservatives like glyphosate and I should say fertilizers like glyphosate, as well as preservatives in food and disruptions in the microbiome. Can you pull that up a little bit? Can you pull that up just a hair for me? Keep going there. Let's get rid of that little ad there. I want to see which one they're talking about here. Oh, this one's propionic acid. Okay, propionic acid actually is not one of the, there's worse preservatives than propionic acid, but that is a fatty acid that's secreted by bacteria, and it plays a role in how bacteria talk to each other in the intestine. So it's thought that propionic acid, exposure to propionic acid may disrupt the microbiome of the mom, and that may lead to problems with the autistic child. Next slide. And children on the autism spectrum disorder may consume more ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods are foods that are made from other processed foods. Processing is just cooking and chopping and macerating and mashing and boiling and all the things you do to foods. Ultra-processed is when the components of the processed food are themselves processed. And so ultra-processed foods are way worse than processed foods. That's why they call them ultra-processed foods. And they are accounting for more and more of the calories that we consume on a regular basis. And it's really unfortunate. And this is, again, related to mental health issues and emotional health issues and autism. Also, autistic kids are notoriously picky eaters. They like foods, or they can like foods, a lot of them, that have a certain crunch to them, texture to them, softness to them, high calorie foods. So they're especially susceptible to the siren calls of Twinkies and French fries and pizza and McDonald's hamburgers and tacos and all the foods that we all eat. But autistic kids tend to be especially prone towards indulging or enjoying these kinds of foods as opposed to vegetables or healthy foods. And this is really one of the problems associated with autism, with treating autism, is that the kids don't like to eat well. And if you already see that there's a diet relationship and an intestinal health relationship, you can see how not eating well is going to be a problem, especially if the parent is not familiar with this underlying causal factor, intestinal health and food health. Next slide. Okay, so what do you do about it? Well, there are nutrients you can use, first of all. The B vitamins are phenomenal for the brain, for everybody. They call the B vitamins the anti-stress vitamins, and that's because they give the body energy. When the body has energy and when it has resources, it feels good about itself. I've been in the skincare business now for 40 years, and one of the secrets I learned about skincare formulations, if you can drown, saturate, drench the skin cells specifically, with nutrients, the skin will be so happy. It'll make collagen, it'll make moisture factors, it'll make healthier skin for you. This is true internally, and this is why pounding nutrition is so important. Not just supplements, but good food, quality food. Not calories, because those represent work, but resources. Resources means vitamins, minerals, aminos and fatty acids, and certain phyto or plant nutrients. These are things that the body can use to make things. And when body feels like it has resources to make things, it's going to make things. It's going to build tissue. It's going to repair. It's going to anti-age. It's going to reduce inflammation. It's going to fight disease. It's going to support digestion and absorption of nutrients. This is why it's going to help repair leaky gut. This is why I'm so big on nutritional supplementation. No surprise. It turns out that the B vitamins, which are important for the heart, they're your anti-stress vitamins. They're important for energy on all levels. They're important for the skin, would also be important for the brain. Niacin was actually used, vitamin B3, by Dr. Abram Hoffer back in the 1950s to treat schizophrenia. And by the way, schizophrenia is part of this whole, I don't think it's on the spectrum, but it's kind of the same idea where you're dealing with immune and inflammatory conditions in the nervous system. This is affecting how nerves are firing and how neurotransmitters, nerve chemicals are being secreted, etc. So Niacin has a long tradition of being used. Vitamin B3 has a long tradition of being used to treat mental health issues. There are people who use vitamin B3 to treat social anxiety disorder. And no surprise, it can also be used to treat autism. Likewise with vitamin B6, I think was the other vitamin that they mentioned there. And also, if you put the next slide up, this is really cool, I think. Vitamin B1. This has got to be, I'm not going to say it's my favorite vitamin because I got a few that I really love, but it's one of my favorite vitamins because it's so useful for the most important part of the body when it comes to how we perform and how we function, and that's the nervous system. Thiamine is a nervous system vitamin. It also is involved in helping the body process sugar. There are many illnesses that are associated with both sugar processing and neurology, and by virtue of its ability to improve sugar processing and neurology, thiamine is incredibly valuable for the brain, and it's depleted by sugar. So the more carbs, the more sugar, the more refined carbs you're eating, the less thiamine you're going to have. And one of the causes of thiamine deficiency is mental health problems, including attention deficit disorder and emotional problems. And there's Werner-Korsakoff syndrome, also known as alcoholic psychosis. Now it turns out that there's a relationship between autism spectrum disorder and thiamine, at least in terms of treating autism spectrum disorder with a specialized form of thiamine, vitamin B1. You don't need a specialized form. This is a tetrahydrofuryl disulfide form. You can just do the plain old thiamine that you get in most vitamin supplements, or of course, we love the Beyond Tangy Tangerine from Longevity. That is a wonderful source of thiamine. Thiamine is also very important, by the way, just as an aside, for enervating the intestine. Chronic constipation can be caused by thiamine deficiency. Of course, chronic constipation can be one of the causes of SIBO. Chronic constipation can exacerbate intestinal problems. So you can see why this is such a valuable vitamin. You do need some pretty significant doses of thiamine. The RDA, as with all RDAs, is pathetically low. It's not there to keep us healthy. It's there to keep us from being diseased. This is how the medical model thinks. It keeps us from being diseased, but it doesn't. It's there to keep us from being diseased, but it's not there to keep us maximally healthy. Not that I'm knocking on the medical model, because keeping us disease-free is a very a worthy goal, of course. But we deserve more than just not having a disease. We deserve to be maximally healthy and strong. So you need a lot of thiamine, 100 milligrams a day, 200 milligrams a day, even 300 to 400 milligrams a day of thiamine. If you're chronically constipated, by the way, thiamine may be just the answer for you. Always take the B vitamins together. You don't want to take just one B vitamin. So if you're dosing with high levels of thiamine, you want to balance that out with niacin and riboflavin, vitamin B2 and B6, and all the other B vitamins. Okay, so the next slide here. This is super cool. I thought this was really interesting. Autism risk determined by the health of the mom's microbiome. So mom, you got to take care of your health. We talked earlier about how deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies that mom experiences can be a problem. So can problems with mom's microbiome. So can problems with mom's blood sugar. So can problems with mom's cortisol levels. So can all health issues, inflammatory health issues that mom is dealing with. Those can all be involved, not just in autism, but also in eczema, childhood acne, ear infections that kids often get. All of these can be, or asthma, respiratory problems. All of these can be related to problems with mom's microbiome. And if you're breastfeeding and your kid has a rash, or your kid has problems breathing or diarrhea or eczema or whatever, that's on the mom, because that means the inflammatory factors from the dysbiosis are coming out in the breast milk. And so mom, you got to be really careful here. Moms should always be supplementing with not only the good probiotics and correcting digestive health for the baby, but also with omega fats. Omega-3 fats are also protective against neural problems, and they're also building for the nervous system. So when mom supplements with omega-3 fats, fish oil, flaxseed oil, other omega-3 fats, fish oil isn't really essential, but it does have DHA and EPA. Not only will the kid have a bigger brain, or he'll be smarter, better intellectual functioning, but also better eyesight and better hand-eye coordination. And as it turns out, he'll have lower risk of emotional and mental health challenges, such as autism. Last thing I want to say here, Liam, is there's a lot of talk about the relationship between vaccines and autism. Have you heard this? The relationship, people are saying, oh, it's vaccines that are causing autism. I'm not sure I don't know whether it's vaccines
Yes.
or not, but I can tell you that vaccines can disturb the microbiome. Vaccines can disturb the bacteria and bacteria that live in the intestine and overall intestinal health. So it may not be the exact vaccine that's doing it, although the vaccine may be inducing the problem via this mechanism of dysbiosis leading to inflammatory and immune reactions in the nervous system, and then not just brain problems, but also like autism, but also neural problems. Vaccines are associated with a lot of nerve issues, and vaccine toxicities include Guillain-Barré syndrome and neural problems with the myelin sheath on the nerves. All of these can be secondary. It's possible. I don't know any research that says this, but it seems like it would be possible, or likely even, because of the vaccine's effect on the bacteria, because of the vaccine causing dysbiosis, which in turn leads to the secretion of all of these immune activating and inflammatory molecules through the intestine, which end up causing the nerve problems.
That's incredible information, because I have heard some doctors forcefully say that there's absolutely no connection between, immunology, vaccines, and autism. But the idea that maybe the way the vaccine affects, because it has all these adjuvants and so on and so forth.
Well, that doesn't help you either. You know what an adjuvant is? Adjuvant. If people knew what an adjuvant was, they wouldn't be happy. An adjuvant is something that makes something more poisonous. Because the poison isn't strong enough to activate the immune response. They got to put extra poison
in there to get the immune response,
to make sure the immune response. That's what an adjuvant is. It's an extra poison.
So I learned so much today, Ben. I have one question, because you were talking about how autism is a disease that manifests itself in the person sort of internally processing the world, and they're
internalizing themselves.
They're internalizing themselves. So let's say you're a mom or a dad, you've got an autistic kid, and they don't want to eat this, and you have to support their immune system.
It's not easy.
Nutrition. Are there transdermal strategies?
No, you got to eat. You got to eat. Yeah, that's good thinking, though. IV, if you can get them IV. But no, you got to eat. Kids got to eat. And it is tough. But I know a lot of autistic parents who are working very successfully with their autistic children, not only with the digestive system, but also with psychological strategies and a lot of love, a lot of TLC. Sure. So it can be, it can be done. It can be challenging, of course, but it can be done. And with this whole idea of nutritional deficiency, the relationship between nutritional deficiencies, the immune system, and the digestive system, and foods and diet and such, we have a potential tool, therapeutic modality that we can use that can really make life a lot easier for a lot of parents, as well as for a lot of kids, and for that matter, a lot of adults who are dealing with some of the adult versions of autism spectrum disorder, things like Asperger's syndrome or social anxiety disorder. Sure. So this gives us a place to work, and it shouldn't be come as a surprise to anybody who's been hearing me speak. I'm telling you now, Liam, everybody listening, you go back to the intestine every single time. Dysbiosis, leaky gut, secretion of toxins into the bloodstream. Every time you work on digestive health, do a food diary, eliminate problem foods, make sure you're supporting intestinal health, make sure you're supporting digestive health with apple cider vinegar with your meals, and digestive enzymes with your meals, and bile salts, and chewing your food. Just chewing your food can be a great strategy for stimulating digestive juices and for improving the digestive process by pre-digesting the food in your mouth and activating it with saliva. There's so many ways that we can actuate good health, reverse chronic degenerative disease, eliminate the possibility of chronic degenerative disease, and live longer, all without the medical model, without drugs, without pharmacists, without doctors. We can do this on our own.
So would you say digestive health is on the top of the triangle?
No, it's the first point. It's the first point.
First point.
The top of the triangle is the jumping off point. The top of the triangle is where you jump off into cardiovascular disease, mental health problems, immune problems, autoimmunity, skin issues. So that's the jumping off point. The first point is the digestive system, then the blood sugar system, then the adrenal thyroid axis, and then it's the jumping off point, but then also you go back down again. See, it's a circle. it's a downward spiral. And it's really because the thyroid regulates the digestive system as well as the blood sugar system.
Fascinating way to look at health, my man.
Awesome.
All right, Ben. Thanks so much for
Thank you.
a fascinating.
We'll see you next week.
Look
Thank you so
at
much, Liam.
autism. Thank everyone for watching. Leave your questions and comments on the platform that you're checking the podcast out on, and we'll see you next Sunday. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Au revoir.